I can still hear the sound of laughter that night, loud, careless, echoing through the banquet hall as my world quietly shattered. People were clapping, glasses were raised, and in that glittering chaos, my sister, my own blood, stood smiling like she'd just saved the family name. But what she did was far from saving anything. She destroyed me. That night wasn't supposed to be about competition. It was my parents' 30th anniversary, a celebration of love, loyalty, and everything we were taught to protect as Monroes. I'd spent weeks helping plan every detail, because that's who I was. The responsible daughter. The quiet one. The one who never made a scene. But Lydia, she was always the favorite. The charming one. The one who could turn a lie into a joke and still be adored for it. And I guess I believed that being the good daughter meant being silent when she crossed the line. I thought silence was strength. Until that moment, when she looked at me with that wicked smile, microphone in hand, and said, "You think you're perfect, Clara? Maybe it's time everyone knows the truth." The laughter faded into whispers. Eyes turned. And the room, filled with people I loved, suddenly became a stage for my humiliation. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, frozen, wondering when love had turned into rivalry. That night, I learned something cruel. Family can destroy you more quietly than strangers ever could. And what Lydia didn't know then was that I would never forgive her. Because sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's the calm before the truth strikes back. People always said the Monroe family looked perfect. At church gatherings, neighbors would whisper, "Such a respectable family, 2 beautiful daughters, a successful father, and a graceful mother." And I used to smile politely, standing beside them like a painted portrait that didn't belong in the frame. Our house was big, spotless, and filled with unspoken rules. Mother always said, "Respect is everything, Clara. We don't air our flaws in public." So we didn't. We smiled for photographs, laughed at dinner tables, and hid our bruises under fine manners. Father was a man of few words, the kind who spoke through expectations. He never shouted, but his silence carried more weight than any punishment. When he looked disappointed, it felt like the world stopped breathing. And for as long as I can remember, that disappointment usually found its way to me. Lydia was different. My younger sister had this glow about her, like she was born to be seen. She'd tell jokes at dinner, tease father, and somehow make even her mistakes look charming. Mother adored her. I can still picture it, the 4 of us sitting around the long oak dining table. Lydia laughing with her fork still in hand, Mother giggling beside her, Father nodding with quiet amusement. And me, quietly clearing the dishes, smiling so they wouldn't notice how invisible I felt. Sometimes I tried to join in. I'd share something from my day, but halfway through, Lydia would interrupt. "Oh, wait till you hear what happened to me." And suddenly, everyone was listening to her again. It wasn't intentional cruelty, it was habit. Lydia spoke, and the room obeyed. When Ethan came into my life, I thought things would change. He was gentle, sincere, the first person who seemed to see me. My parents approved of him, mostly because he came from a decent family. But Lydia, she smiled too much around him, complimented him too easily. "You're lucky, Clara," she'd say with that teasing grin. "If I'd met him first, I might have stolen him from you." She laughed. I didn't. One evening, as I helped Mother arrange the silverware for an upcoming family dinner, she sighed and said, "Lydia has a spark, you know. You're both lovely, but she just shines differently." Her words were gentle, but they stung like a truth I'd heard all my life. Still, I kept trying. I took on extra chores, organized family events, even covered for Lydia when she messed up appointments or forgot errands. Every small act of loyalty was my way of saying, "See me? I belong here too." Aunt Grace noticed once. She pulled me aside after a dinner party, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "You remind me of your grandmother," she said softly. "Too much dignity for people who don't always deserve it." I didn't understand it then, but those words would stay with me. Then came the anniversary preparations. 30 years of my parents' marriage, the grandest celebration our family ever hosted. I volunteered to plan it all, the venue, the decorations, even the slideshow of old family photos. I wanted it perfect, not for praise, but for peace. But Lydia had other plans. She began showing up late to meetings, changing the playlist, flirting with the event manager, and making decisions without asking me. When I confronted her, she smirked. "Relax, Clara.
You're too uptight.
Let me make it fun.
Mother took her side, of course.
She's just helping, dear. Don't be so controlling. That word, controlling, cut deep. All I ever wanted was order, respect, a sense of belonging. The night before the event, I walked past Lydia's room and heard laughter. Her voice, low and mischievous, saying, she has no idea what's coming.
Then a whisper I couldn't fully make out.
I froze outside the door, heart pounding.
Something in her tone didn't sound like sisterly teasing.
It sounded like a promise, a warning. And that's when I realized the family I'd spent my life protecting might be the one quietly preparing to destroy me. The first crack appeared so quietly, I almost missed it. It started a few weeks after the anniversary planning began. I was handling everything, the guest list, the florist, the speeches. Lydia claimed she wanted to help, but her version of help meant stealing the spotlight. She volunteered to host the event's opening speech, even though I'd been rehearsing it for weeks.
At first, I tried to stay calm. It's fine, I told myself.
Let her have her moment. But every time I stepped aside, she took another piece of what was supposed to be mine. Then came the whispers. It began with Nora, Lydia's best friend, the kind of woman who smiles at your face and slices your confidence when you turn away. One morning, I overheard her laughing with Lydia near the kitchen.
She's so uptight. No wonder Ethan looks bored, Nora snickered.
Lydia didn't defend me. She just smirked and said, Clara means well, she just doesn't know how to shine.
That sentence broke something inside me.
Still, I tried to ignore it. I buried myself in work, double-checking every anniversary detail, hoping the results would speak for themselves. But even Father began to notice Lydia's initiative. One evening, he said, you should take notes from your sister. She's learning to lead.
Lead?
Lydia hadn't planned a thing. She just played the part better. Ethan sensed my frustration.
You're overthinking it, Clara, he said softly one night.
Lydia's just being Lydia. But there was something in his voice, hesitation, guilt, that made me uneasy. Later that week, during a dinner at my parents' house, Lydia leaned over the table and said with a mischievous smile, Ethan, did you tell Clara what you said to me the other day?
My fork froze mid-A. He looked startled.
What are you talking about? She shrugged, laughing. Oh, nothing serious. He just said I looked beautiful in that red dress. Relax, Clara, I'm kidding.
Everyone laughed. Everyone but me.
The humiliation felt small, but it lingered like a stain. After dinner, I confronted Lydia in the hallway.
Why do you do this?
Why can't you just let me have one thing without turning it into a show? She stared at me, cold and calculating.
Because you're boring, Clara.
People only notice you when you break. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. For the first time, I saw something dark in her eyes. Not jealousy, not hate, but hunger. She wanted to be adored, even if it meant destroying me to get it. As the anniversary drew closer, small things kept going wrong. The florist cancelled. The slideshow of family photos mysteriously glitched, skipping all the pictures of me. When I asked Lydia, she just laughed. Oh, maybe the computer's tired of you too. Even Mother started believing her version of events. You've been tense lately, Clara, she said one afternoon. You should let Lydia handle more. She has a lighter touch. A lighter touch, that's what they called it when she erased me. One evening, I walked into the living room to find Lydia sitting with Ethan, showing him old family albums.
They were laughing.
I froze in the doorway, unseen. She pointed to a picture of us as kids and said, See? I was always the troublemaker. And she was always the saint.
But saints get lonely. Something inside me burned. When she saw me standing there, Lydia smiled sweetly. Oh.
We were just talking about childhood memories. Ethan looked guilty, like he'd been caught doing something wrong, even though he hadn't. Yet that guilt was enough to make me realize how skillfully Lydia played her games.
That night, I couldn't sleep.
Every word, every laugh, every look, felt like proof that my family's love had been rationed, handed to Lydia in abundance and to me in crumbs. Still, I refused to cry. I promised myself I would endure until the anniversary. I would not let her ruin it. But then, she did something I could never forgive. A week before the event, Lydia sent me a message by accident. It was meant for Nora. It said, "The speech will be legendary. She won't know what hit her." My hands trembled as I read it. That's when I knew this wasn't about sibling rivalry anymore.
Lydia wasn't just trying to outshine me. She was planning to humiliate me.
And for the first time in my life, I felt something stronger than pain, rage. There's a moment when silence stops being strength and starts becoming surrender.
I think that's when I began to lose myself.
After Lydia's message, every smile she gave me felt poisoned. I couldn't confront her yet, not without proof, not without knowing what she had planned.
But inside, something shifted.
My patience, once my shield, began to crack. The tension started showing during small family moments. At breakfast, she'd slide little jabs between bites of toast.
Clara, you're always so serious.
No wonder people think you're hard to talk to, she'd say, laughing like it was a joke. Mother would chuckle softly. She's just practical, dear.
But her eyes said something else, something closer to embarrassment.
Ethan tried to comfort me, but even his presence began to feel heavy.
Lydia made sure of that.
One afternoon, I caught her standing too close to him by the window, whispering. When I walked in, she smirked. Oh, relax, Clara. I was just telling Ethan about your surprise for the anniversary.
I blinked.
What surprise?
She smiled wider.
Exactly. That's how she worked, small, calculated confusions. She never screamed, never cursed.
She made you doubt your own sanity.
At a family brunch a few days later, Lydia decided to tell everyone a story. Remember when Clara tried to bake that pie for Dad and burned it black? She laughed. The smoke alarm wouldn't stop for an hour. Everyone joined in, even Father.
Ah, yes. Poor Clara, he said between laughs.
I forced a smile, cheeks burning. I was 12, I whispered.
But nobody heard.
Or maybe they just didn't care. That night, as I cleaned up the dishes, Aunt Grace came to help. She didn't say much, just placed her hand on mine and said, You don't deserve this, you know.
For a moment, I almost cried. But I swallowed it.
Because in my family, tears were weakness. Then came the final rehearsal dinner before the big anniversary. Lydia arrived late, in a stunning red dress that drew every gaze in the room. She looked like she belonged on stage, and maybe that was her intention. She raised a glass and said, Here's to family, the ones who love us, and the ones who pretend to.
The crowd laughed awkwardly. I froze.
Her eyes met mine for just a second, cold, victorious. After the dinner, I cornered her in the hallway. Why are you doing this?
I asked.
She tilted her head, her voice dripping with innocence. Doing what? Having fun. I stepped closer. You're trying to embarrass me.
She smirked.
Oh, Clara. You embarrass yourself just by existing.
Something inside me cracked open.
For the first time, I wanted to hurt her back. The next day, I tried to talk to Mother. I told her how Lydia had been crossing boundaries, how she mocked me in front of guests.
Mother sighed, setting down her teacup.
Clara, you take things too personally. Lydia just has a more expressive personality. Expressive.
I repeated, my voice trembling.
She's humiliating me.
Mother frowned.
Then don't give her reasons to. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. You never see me, do you?
Mother looked away.
You're overreacting. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the framed family photo on my dresser. We looked perfect, frozen smiles, flawless posture. But behind those smiles was a truth I was only beginning to accept. I was never part of their perfection.
I was the flaw they tried to hide.
The day of the anniversary arrived like a storm I couldn't stop. The ballroom was beautiful, golden lights, white roses, the sound of violins. Guests filled the air with laughter.
And Lydia? She floated through it all like a queen. Ethan kissed my cheek before the event started. You look amazing, he whispered.
But even then, I felt the distance, like his affection was duty, not love.
When it was time for speeches, my palms were sweating.
I walked to the stage, holding the microphone, ready to finally be seen. But before I could say a word, Lydia stepped forward, smiling sweetly. Actually, she said, I have something to say first.
The crowd turned toward her. My heart pounded. She wasn't supposed to speak yet.
She looked right at me, eyes gleaming, and began. Families are built on love, loyalty, and truth. And sometimes, we have to expose the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. A hush fell over the hall. I felt it then, the sharp, invisible pull of betrayal tightening around my throat.
Something big was coming. Something that would change everything. And as Lydia smiled at the crowd, I realized this wasn't her speech. It was her performance.
And I was about to be her next scene. There are moments in life that carve you open so completely, you stop feeling pain. You just go silent, like your body refuses to believe what's happening. That's how it felt the night my sister turned the spotlight into a weapon. The ballroom was glowing that evening. Crystal chandeliers reflected in champagne glasses. The soft hum of music filled the air. It was supposed to be a celebration, my parents' 30th anniversary, a tribute to their love, to our family's name, to everything I'd spent weeks building perfectly. And yet, as Lydia stepped forward, smiling like a star in her own play, I felt my stomach twist.
She wasn't supposed to speak. The program had been clear.
I was meant to deliver the final toast, my small moment of pride after years of being background noise.
But Lydia had other plans.
Before Clara speaks, she began, holding the microphone, I just want to share something honest, something that shows how much we've all grown as a family.
Her voice trembled just enough to sound emotional. People leaned in, charmed. Even Father looked proud.
Then she pulled out a folded piece of paper from her purse.
I froze. I knew that paper. It was mine. My letter.
The one I'd written years ago during college, never meant for anyone else.
A confession I'd kept locked in my drawer.
It was a letter about my loneliness, about feeling unseen by my parents, about how I sometimes wished I'd been born someone like Lydia. Brighter, easier to love.
And she read it. Word for word.
Her voice echoed through the speakers, delicate but cruel. I'm tired of pretending that I'm fine when I feel invisible. Maybe if I stopped trying so hard, someone would finally notice me.
Gasps filled the room. My chest went numb.
I could see the confusion, the pity in people's faces. Some guests whispered, others looked away.
Father's expression hardened instantly.
Mother's lips parted in horror, not at Lydia, but at me. When Lydia finished, she smiled faintly, pretending to fight tears. I only shared this because I want Clara to know she's loved. We all love her, even when she doubts it.
There was applause. Actual applause.
As if she'd just delivered a touching tribute instead of stabbing me in front of everyone.
I felt myself shaking.
My throat burned with the kind of silence that screams. When I finally found my voice, it came out as a whisper. How did you get that letter?
Lydia blinked innocently.
Oh, I found it while cleaning your old things. I thought it was beautiful. Beautiful. I hissed, my voice cracking. That was private, Lydia.
The crowd shifted uncomfortably.
Father's tone cut through the air.
Enough, Clara.
Don't make a scene. And there it was, the phrase that defined my entire life. Don't make a scene.
Don't embarrass us. Don't speak. I dropped the microphone and walked out.
My vision blurred as I pushed through the doors, the cool night air slapping my face like reality itself.
Behind me, the applause turned into murmurs.
I could hear Lydia's voice faintly saying, she's just emotional. Outside, the wind was cold, sharp, merciless. I wanted to scream, to break something, but all I could do was stand there under the hotel lights, numb. A few minutes later, Ethan came out. For a second, I thought maybe he'd defend me. Maybe he'd say what I couldn't. But he just sighed.
Clara, she didn't mean to hurt you.
Everyone saw it as a gesture of love. A gesture?
I laughed bitterly.
She humiliated me.
He rubbed his neck, avoiding my eyes.
You shouldn't have written something like that if you didn't want it found.
That's when I realized it wasn't just Lydia. It was all of them.
They would always protect the story, not the truth. When I returned home that night, the house was silent. My parents didn't say a word. My mother walked past me without meeting my eyes. Father's study door was closed. Even the walls felt colder. Later, I overheard them talking through the door. She embarrassed us in front of everyone, Mother whispered.
It was a mistake keeping her in charge, Father replied.
Lydia knows how to handle people better.
Handle people.
That's what they called manipulation now. In that moment, I realized I wasn't part of this family anymore, not really. I was a liability, a quiet reminder of their imperfection. 4 days, I stayed in my room, listening to the muffled sounds of life continuing without me.
Lydia visited once.
She brought tea, pretending kindness. You know, Clara, she said softly, You could fix all this if you just apologized to them.
Admit you overreacted.
That's what they want. I stared at her, my hands trembling. You ruined me in front of everyone, and you still want me to bow?
She smiled.
You're too proud for your own good. Then she walked out, humming. That's when something inside me finally shifted, not just anger, but clarity. All my life, I'd believed being good meant being quiet. That respect was earned through obedience, that love could be won by patience. But that night proved something different. Some people only respect you when they fear losing your silence. So I made a promise to myself. No more silence. No more shrinking. If Lydia wanted a stage, I'd give her one, just not the kind she expected. As I looked at the crumpled copy of my letter on the floor, I whispered the words that would change everything. From now on, the truth speaks for me. And in that quiet, something powerful was born. Not forgiveness, not surrender, but resolve.
Justice wasn't going to come by accident. I was going to make it happen.
After the betrayal, I spent 1 week moving like a ghost through my own life, eating when necessary, answering questions with nods, pretending to be fragile because that's what everyone expected of me.
But inside, the storm was changing.
Grief was a raw fuel, and I decided to use it. I would not let Lydia's performance be the last act of my story. I started small, like anyone who's been broken and needs to know what still holds together. I read my old journal entries, the ones I thought were private and stupid, and realized they were not weakness, they were proof. Proof I'd loved this family enough to forgive.
Proof Lydia had stolen that trust.
I copied messages, saved photos, and backed up anything that hinted at her intent. What felt like whispers before suddenly became a map. Aunt Grace was the first person I trusted outside my own head. She didn't offer pity, she offered observation. You have a voice, Clara, she said, steady as a lighthouse. You've only been taught to hide it. Her words were the first permission I had to stop shrinking. She gave me access to old letters and her memory of things no one else wanted to remember. Small facts about Lydia's patterns, times she'd lied and how she'd always turned truth into theater. Aunt Grace didn't need convincing. She'd seen manipulative people before. She recognized the pattern and agreed to stand with me quietly. Ethan was harder. After that night he'd been distant, but when I approached him with calm instead of accusation, he faltered and then opened up. I was embarrassed, he admitted. I didn't want to choose. He'd been groomed, like the rest of them, to value the family story above a messy truth. But his guilt had weight, his honesty could be useful. He began to pass me small things he overheard, offhand comments Lydia made in confidence, little threads that, when woven together, formed a rope. The plan wasn't to destroy Lydia publicly with noise. I wanted something cleaner, undeniable proof of intent, a pattern of manipulation that would make denial impossible. I gathered text threads between Lydia and Nora, screenshots where they plotted the humiliation, timestamps on when the slideshow was corrupted, and a record of emails where Lydia had volunteered to organize details then sabotage them. I even found a receipt for a service Lydia paid to promote a rumor online. Silent, cheap, but effective.
I rehearsed how I would present it.
Not with rage, but with the steady hand of someone who'd decided dignity mattered more than vengeance. I imagined the reveal at a family gathering where the truth couldn't be waved away as jealousy. I practiced my voice until it was flat and controlled, until trauma could no longer be used against me as proof I was unstable. But revenge, even when it's justified, carries a weight. I lost sleep imagining the cost. Would I break my parents?
Would Ethan be further harmed? Could I live with the chaos that follows a family torn open?
Sometimes doubt whispered that I should walk away, that silence was safety. Other times, fury sharpened my resolve until doubt seemed cowardly. I found allies in unexpected places, the event manager who'd been unnerved by Lydia's late-night calls, the florist who'd been paid but then quietly cancelled, a distant cousin who remembered Lydia's small cruelties. Each voice added credibility, each testimony a brick in the wall I was building around the truth. Most importantly, I changed myself. My posture grew straighter, my voice firmer. People began to notice I was no longer the woman who apologized first. I practiced saying, I deserve respect, in the mirror until it stopped sounding like a plea and started sounding like a fact. On the eve of the confrontation, I sat alone in my car outside the old family home, files on the passenger seat like a small arsenal. The city lights blurred through the window, and for the first time since the letter was read aloud, I felt quiet, not empty, but focused. Revenge isn't a shout, it's a decision that can't be undone. I breathed in, opened the folder, and whispered the final truth to myself. This is not about winning. It's about making them see. Then I stood, walked to the door, and the world tilted toward one impossible question. Would I finally speak the truth in a place where it could not be ignored? The night I chose to speak the truth, the world felt unnaturally still. The rain had stopped, the sky hung heavy, and the air carried that strange quiet right before a storm breaks. My parents thought I'd invited them for a simple family dinner to rebuild harmony. Lydia came glowing, confident, wrapped in a silk dress that shimmered like deceit under the chandelier. The table was set exactly as Mother liked, white china, crystal glasses, a vase of lilies. My hands didn't tremble as I poured the wine. I had rehearsed this moment too many times to falter now. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. I wanted us to talk openly, for once.
Lydia laughed lightly. Oh, Clara. You don't need to dramatize. We've all moved on. I smiled. You have.
I haven't. Her eyes flickered, just for a second.
Father cleared his throat.
If this is another argument, Clara, it ends here. No, Father, I said, sliding a small black folder onto the table.
This is where it begins. The folder opened with a soft click.
Inside were printed screenshots, receipts, text logs, the spine of my truth.
Lydia's face paled instantly.
What is this?
Mother asked, already uneasy.
Evidence, I said. Proof that Lydia and her friend Nora planned the entire stunt at the anniversary. The lost letter, the slideshow sabotage, the rumors. Every humiliation had a script, and Lydia wrote it. Lydia's composure cracked. You're insane. You're making things up.
Am I? I turned the folder toward Father.
Read it. The messages, the payments, the timestamps. Look at who hired a tech service to delete my name from the event credits. Look at the date.
Father's brows furrowed.
He scanned the papers, slower with each line, the color draining from his face. Mother's hand trembled against the tablecloth. I didn't, Lydia stammered. I was just joking. Nora twisted things. It wasn't like that. Aunt Grace, who'd stayed silent until then, finally spoke. You've lied long enough, Lydia. I warned you this would catch up to you. The room went quiet, except for the soft ticking of the clock. Lydia's eyes darted to me, angry, cornered.
You think this makes you better?
You've always been jealous, Clara. You want to ruin me because you can't stand that people love me more. I looked straight at her, steady and unflinching.
You're wrong. I don't want to ruin you. I want you to see what you've done.
I want you to feel what it's like to have your truth stolen. Ethan, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. She's telling the truth, he said quietly. I saw Lydia's messages with Nora weeks ago.
I didn't say anything because
I was afraid. Lydia turned on him.
You coward, she spat. He met her glare. Maybe, but not anymore. Mother began to cry softly.
Father set the papers down, his voice breaking the tension like thunder. Lydia, I gave you everything.
We trusted you, and you humiliated your own sister.
I did it for attention. Lydia shouted, tears streaking her face.
No one ever sees me unless I make them look. You think she's innocent? She always made me feel small.
Her confession hung heavy in the air, pathetic, painful, real. I felt something unexpected then, not victory, but relief. The truth had finally spoken for itself.
I stood up slowly.
You could have had everything, Lydia. Love, respect, forgiveness. But you traded all of it for applause. She sobbed, sinking into her chair, her mascara smearing like guilt on her skin. Father turned toward me, his voice quieter now. Clara, we were wrong. We should have listened. Mother reached for my hand, but I didn't take it. I wasn't ready. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give yet. It had to be earned. I looked around the table, the same table where I'd once been invisible. Now every eye was on me, not in pity, but in reckoning. From now on, I said softly, this family doesn't get to define me by silence.
No one spoke. Even the clock seemed to pause.
Lydia's sobs were the only sound left, echoing in the hollow of her own downfall. Then I gathered my folder, straightened my shoulders, and turned to leave. As I walked out the door, I heard Aunt Grace whisper, the truth always comes home, eventually.
I didn't look back. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away from shame. I was walking toward freedom, leaving their lies behind in the house where I'd finally learned how to be seen.
4 days after that dinner, the house that once buzzed with laughter fell into a strange, fragile quiet. No one called, no one asked questions. Even the air inside felt like it was holding its breath. The truth had done what I couldn't. It broke the illusion. I packed my things slowly, carefully, as if each folded shirt was a goodbye. Mother avoided me in the hallways, her once perfect posture now slouched under the weight of guilt. Father retreated into his study, the same place where I'd once overheard him defending Lydia, pretending I didn't exist. I wondered if he was reading the evidence again, finally realizing how blind his love had been. Lydia stayed in her room for days. The glow that had once surrounded her, the charm, the confidence, was gone. Aunt Grace told me she'd refused to eat, that she cried through the night. I didn't feel joy hearing that. Just a deep, hollow sadness. Because despite everything, she was still my sister. Ethan called me 2 days later. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. I don't know how to apologize, he said. You didn't deserve any of it.
I know, I replied quietly.
But I needed to go through it. Otherwise, I'd never have known what respect really means.
We met once, in a small cafe. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back gently.
You believed her over me once, I said. That kind of doubt doesn't fade.
He nodded, eyes glistening.
You're stronger than I ever realized.
I had to be, I said.
That night, I went to visit Grandma Ellen. She sat in her favorite chair, the same way she always did, calm, still, as though she'd been waiting.
I told her everything. How Lydia used me. How I'd finally fought back.
She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that holds both pride and sorrow.
Truth has a sound, Clara, she said.
It's quiet at first, but once it's spoken, it never fades. It keeps echoing in the hearts of those who need to hear it.
Her words stayed with me.
The following week, my parents called a family meeting, not to apologize, but to talk about moving forward. Lydia sat at the far end of the table, eyes swollen, face pale. She couldn't meet my gaze. Father began, voice shaking. We can't change what happened, but we can learn from it.
I listened, silent. Mother reached for my hand. We hurt you. I see that now.
You deserved better from all of us.
For a moment, I wanted to forgive. To believe their remorse could rewrite what had been done.
But forgiveness, I realized, isn't an eraser.
It's a boundary. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I can't stay here.
I've spent my whole life trying to earn your love by being small. I'm done shrinking. Lydia finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted them to notice me. I looked at her and said quietly, and they did. But now they'll never forget what it cost. She broke down, and for the first time, I didn't feel hatred, only distance. Some wounds don't bleed. They just change how you breathe. I left that day without looking back. Aunt Grace helped me move into a small apartment near the edge of town. It wasn't much, 1 bedroom, 1 window overlooking the river, but it was mine. My peace. My beginning. Every morning, I'd make coffee, open the curtains, and feel sunlight on my face without fear of anyone dimming it. Sometimes I'd catch myself replaying that night in my mind, Lydia's trembling voice, Father's disbelief, the moment truth silenced the entire room. And instead of pain, I'd feel something else, relief. Because I had finally learned the difference between being respected and being tolerated. People often mistake kindness for weakness, but they forget, calm is not surrender. Dignity doesn't shout. It endures. One evening, Aunt Grace visited. As we sat watching the sun disappear behind the city, she turned to me and said, "You look free." I smiled. "I am." She nodded, then asked softly, "Do you regret speaking up?" I took a deep breath, the kind that feels like healing, and said the words that summed up everything I'd learned. Silence protects lies, but truth restores dignity. She squeezed my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. Now, when people mention the Monroe family, I don't flinch. I don't hide. I simply smile. Because I know that behind every story of betrayal, there's a woman who decided her self-worth wasn't up for debate. And if my story teaches anything, it's this: sometimes the loudest revenge isn't destruction. It's walking away with your peace intact, your head high, and your name finally spoken with respect.